James Wood, Crunch Time for the Pheasant. Martin began to gain power, and power, as we all know, is the greatest narcotic or hallucinogen. He got invited to a shooting weekend. This meant dressing up in clothes from the 19th century and blasting away at ducks and geese who died in agony from gunshot wounds. Martin had never wanted to kill anything, and the sight of dying birds made him feel sick, especially if they weren't that bastard pheasant. He went anyway because he'd been invited, and he thought it might be good for his career. Recently, he'd learned career meant sitting in an office for 8 hours and doing what he was told to do. He also remembered the other meaning of the word, to run around wildly and with no apparent purpose. As he grew in power, he started to come up with new ideas. One time he decided taxing condoms would be great, because he didn't like them. So he fed opposition parties in Parliament bogus statistics about the need for better family planning. He convinced people, using evidence, that funds for this campaign should come from the user base for condoms. The government caved in, and the world's first pay-as-you-come legislation was born. However much his power grew, he still had done nothing about that pheasant. He celebrated his first work anniversary with a luxurious lunch. But even as he perfected his own life, so the pheasant's existence came to annoy him more. Soon the very idea that this bird would have the temerity to squawk and shit where he worked was offensive to him, and he swore he would end that bird, come what may. I guess it's about the completely absurd overuse of statistics and the scientific method and their misapplication of both of those things in the modern world. So, you see surveys saying, 43% of people say they would never fall in love with somebody with dark hair or whatever. They're just these completely asinine use of statistics, and I wanted to satirize that really through this story. Well, actually, it's really funny because I was thinking about this before this interview, and it's actually not quite as easy as that. I guess the part we just discussed is obvious, right? The misuse of statistics, the overuse of the scientific method is everywhere around us. However, when it came to coming up with the pheasant as a kind of demon or a foil to all of this human scheming, that was during lockdown. I was stuck in my sister's house for 2 weeks, and she did actually have a one-legged pheasant in her garden that squawked and annoyed the hell out of everybody. So that was kind of the genesis for the piece itself. It's a great question, and obviously, with all modesty, I don't know how much of an answer I have. However, what's happened as I write more and more short fiction, I've come to see the close relationship. Not just people will say different forms of narrative, and that's kind of obvious, like film or novels or what have you, but actually between the short story and the poem. And so, what I've found helpful are techniques like brevity and compression, mixed with incidents, making stuff happen. Stephen King uses the phrase "move the damn story along," right? And then I guess also those things that are essential to any novel or interesting story, unexpected stuff and twists. So to me, the short story is a really interesting mixture of the novel and the poem. That's how I've come to see it over the years. Again, I don't know how many tips I can give, but what I will say is that the age that we live in now really demands satire. I can't think of a time for, if I looked at this from my culture, from a European cultural perspective, I can't think of a time when in the last 250, 300 years, we've been more in need of satire, right? At the moment, the French philosopher Jacques Ellul talks about the demonic in politics, how what is supposed to create society, bring people together, is actually separating us. And that's such an absurd situation to be in, that, politics, at least in Western Europe and North America, is proving to kind of decreate the polity that it claims to be creating. And so, I think we just have this rich vein for satire and humor all around us. It's such a rich vein. You could just pull it out the air right in front of you. Sure. So I'm going to be greedy and pick two, if that's okay, for very different reasons. So one I would pick would be Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected, a story called My Uncle Oswald, purely because it's got all those pyrotechnics, the mad incidents. It's just a joyous kind of romp, and it's hilarious. And then I would also pick pretty much anything from James Joyce's Dubliners. But I guess what came to mind was The Dead, and in that case, I'm looking at the tremendous poetry of the language expressed in prose, which of course Joyce went on to perfect in Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. But the sonorousness of Joyce's prose is tremendous. At the other end of the scale, Roald Dahl, it's just incident plot. How mad can I get with this? So the two, I think, are a very interesting juxtaposition. Yeah, sure, thanks. So I wanted to dedicate this story to my sister's family and her house and everyone in it, Roselawn. And in terms of stuff I have coming out, I'm actually, my new satire, funnily enough, is going to be published by Terra House Press later this year in the United States. It's called By Any Other Name, and it's about the New York publishing industry.